You know, there's a silent war happening right now. It's not being fought with viruses or malware. No, it's being fought with logic itself. Today, we're going to unpack AegisNet, a brand new kind of defense system that's built to fight an enemy that can actually think.
So let's just dive right into this quote. The exploit is not a file, it is a reasoning process. This right here captures the whole new reality of cybersecurity. We've literally entered an era where the biggest threat isn't some malicious piece of code you can find and delete. Nope, the threat is a line of thinking, a weaponized thought process that's designed to turn an AI completely against itself.
So, what does this new era of attacks even look like? Well, the game has totally changed. Adversaries, the bad guys, they've evolved way beyond traditional hacking. They're not just trying to, break down the door anymore. They're learning how to talk their way inside.
And this is the huge paradigm shift we're talking about. We've moved from just brute force attacks to what are being called chain of thought exploits. See, attackers are now using the AI's own reasoning abilities against it. They're crafting these really complex, multi-step arguments to basically trick the system into handing over the keys. And that makes all our old firewalls and antivirus software, well, pretty much useless, because they can't tell the difference between a dangerous thought and a legitimate one.
Okay, so how exactly is logic being weaponized? Let's take a closer look at the attacker's playbook and the two main weapons they're using in this new kind of warfare.
So on one side, you've got something called recursive logic injection, which is all about overwhelming the AI's memory. And on the other side, you have Willowclass entropy probing. This one's a lot more subtle. It's kind of like a sonar system for the AI's defenses, just sending out these little pings of noise to map out its internal landscape. So two very different strategies, but both are incredibly dangerous.
All right, let's break down that first attack. Imagine you ask your smart assistant to do something that's just impossibly complex, like, write a novel and compose a symphony at the exact same time. That's basically recursive logic injection. The attacker sends a request that is so convoluted, so twisted, that buried deep inside all that logic is a hidden command. The AI's short-term memory, its context window, it just gets overloaded. And in that one moment of confusion, bam, the hidden malicious code gets executed.
Now, this second method, it's all about being sneaky. With Willowclass entropy probing, attackers are basically shouting nonsense at the system. They send these streams of random, nonsensical data, and then they listen very, very carefully to the echoes that come back. By analyzing how the system filters out all that noise, they can start to map its internal architecture, looking for weak spots or seams in the defense.
But you know how it is. For every new weapon, a new shield has to be built. Now that we understand the threat, we can see exactly where AegisNet comes into play. It represents a total counter-evolution in defense, a system that's designed not just to block attacks, but to actually outthink them.
So, remember that first threat, recursive logic injection? Let's see how AegisNet deals with it.
AegisNet's counter here it's just brilliant. It's called context window shredding. So the system has this built-in complexity detector, right? It analyzes the structure of any incoming request. And if a request is seen as just way too convoluted, it's immediately shredded into these tiny isolated fragments. That makes it totally impossible for the context window to overflow. The weaponized thought is literally turned into harmless confetti.
Okay, next up. How does AegisNet handle that more subtle threat of entropy probing? Where attackers are trying to map the system's defenses by sending it streams of noise.
Well, AegisNet fights fire with fire using a technique called topological noise injection. So if an attacker tries to map the system by listening to echoes, AegisNet creates what's essentially a hall of mirrors. It generates its own synthetic noise, creating this labyrinth of fake seams and phantom vulnerabilities. It traps the attacker in a completely useless map of a ghost architecture. It's amazing.
But AegisNet has one final, ultimate layer of defense. It's called GSE logic hardening, and you can think of it as the system's ultimate bouncer, the final gatekeeper. Every single action, every tool the AI wants to use, has to pass a rigorous time-bound check just to verify that it's legitimate.
And here's the kicker. Here's why that check is unbeatable. Every single operation has to be verified with a secure digital signature in under 15 milliseconds. That's faster than you can blink. A legitimate process, it can do this instantly, no problem. But a malicious exploit, one that's built on all these layers of complex reasoning, it simply cannot generate the correct proof that fast. It's a physical time barrier that a logic bomb just cannot overcome.
So, what does all this actually mean on the battlefield? Let's look at the results. Let's see how AegisNet really performs against these advanced thinking threats. And this threat intelligence dashboard, well, it tells the whole story. The zero-shot RCE, that's a type of logic bomb that can execute without any prior knowledge of the system. It's completely contained. The entropy probing, trapped in a fake architecture. And even the lower-level identity attacks are totally blocked. It is a clean sweep.
And this brings us to the final verdict from the source material, and it's a powerful summary of this whole new battle. The Dragon has identified the virus in the logic. The zero shot is now a zero success. The Dragon, that's AegisNet, it found the virus, not in the code, but in the logic itself. And because of that, the once unstoppable zero-shot attack is now, well, a zero success.
AegisNet gives us an absolutely incredible defense for the threats we're seeing today. But this whole explainer, it also leaves us with a really critical, forward-looking question. What we're seeing is an arms race of intelligence itself. And as the attackers get smarter, and they will get smarter, the question that remains is, will our defenses always be able to evolve fast enough to stay one step ahead?